Welcome to the Nutrigenomic Nation podcast with Brian Highfield, certified nutritionist, author, speaker, and founder of multiple successful companies in the health world. Brian is known for educating healthcare professionals and others on improving their health and their life through breakthroughs in nutrition, technology, and biochemistry. On the podcast, Brian interviews thought leaders in the world of nutrition and natural health. He and his guests share the secrets of a whole life natural approach to health and the life-altering results you can get by making easy changes to your diet and daily routine.
Well, hello, welcome to Nutrigenomic Nation. I'm your host, Brian Highfield, and this is where we talk about nutritional-based healthcare technology and emerging trends related to your genetic health. And so welcome to a new episode, and we have a very special guest. Today, we have Dr. Jillian Finker today. Dr. Finker is a naturopathic doctor. She has a private practice in Belmore, New York, and she specializes in women's health and is an expert in natural medicine. Dr. Finker has been selected as the best alternative doctor on Long Island for 2011, 2012, and 2013. She has been on various television programs, radio shows, and she is a frequent lecturer nationwide. And she was the technical editor for Boosting Your Immunity for Dummies, Adrenal Fatigue for Dummies, and is in the process of editing other health books. Her work has been highlighted in First for Women's Magazine several times, along with other major journals and publications. It's about wellness naturally. Her latest book is available right now on Amazon. And so, Dr. Jillian Finker, I want to welcome you to Nutrigenomic Nation.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So my first question for you is, I want to get to know you a little bit. I have our listeners get to know you a little bit and just understand your background a little more. It's very impressive bio I just read here. But why did you choose healthcare as a career, and then why did you get started in this?
Sure. So ever since I was little, I wanted to be a doctor. I just loved helping people and had an interest in the sciences and in medicine. And my mom was a nurse, so I had that experience growing up. And then when I was in college and I started to take my pre-medical classes, my mom, being a nurse and seeing what went on in regular medicine, was like telling me that she didn't think I'd be too happy in regular medicine. She felt that I wouldn't have enough time to spend with patients, and that I would feel rushed, and she just didn't see it as a good fit for me. So then I started to look into chiropractic care, and that really interests me because it focused on nutrition, and you could spend as much time with patients as you liked, and I was gonna go that route. But then I fell into some health issues when I was in college, and I ended up going on the birth control pill. And a couple weeks afterwards, I started to get severe abdominal pains. It was terrible. I had CAT scans, MRIs, you name it. Nothing was coming back. I was in and out of the hospital. And I went back to my gynecologist and I asked her, could this severe pain be from the pill? She was like, no, it's a coincidence. There's no way. So I suffered for a few months. And finally, my dad was like, you want to be a chiropractor? Go see my chiropractor. Let's see if he can help you. So I went to the chiropractor and I told him everything. And he told me, I'll never forget, I still have the visual. He said, get in your car, take that packet of birth control, and while you're driving, throw it out the window. He's like, the pain is 100% from that. You stop it, you'll be fine. Stop the birth control, the pain went away. My mom subsequently looked it up in her nursing book, and the number one side effect of that particular pill was severe abdominal pain.
Wow.
So after seeing that, I was like, okay, I definitely want to be a chiropractor. I was so impressed with the chiropractor I was seeing. And he proceeded to tell me, you don't want to be a chiropractor. You're tiny. You know, I was 97 pounds weakly then. He's like, it's going to be tough for you to do this kind of thing. He's like, you want to be a naturopathic doctor. So this was a long time ago. We didn't have Google. I had to go to the library, get this huge book out on naturopathic medicine. And as I was reading it, I'm like, this is my career. This is exactly what I want to do, what I want to be. I was so happy that I fell into that. And I've never regretted it. It's such a great career. It's exactly what I was essentially born to do.
That's a great story. I mean, I hear so many healthcare professionals where they've been guided into the profession because of a health issue. that they personally experienced. And that's an amazing story of getting into that and just having that personal experience to drive you into naturopathic medicine. That's awesome. So for our listeners, we really want to educate them on how nutrition really impacts our DNA, but just in general, just how important is nutrition for someone's overall health, and can it lead to disease if you don't eat right?
Sure. Nutrition is the foundation of our health. I mean, I've seen diets transform my patients over and over again. It's something that is integral. I mean, we wouldn't expect our cars to run. I always use this analogy. If we put sugar water in our car, we would not expect it to run. It needs high octane fuel. So why wouldn't our bodies need the same thing? Need really good nutrient dense food so we can function really well. I mean, I remember when I was back in undergrad and my roommate at the time was on a fat-free diet. I'm like, oh, let me try this. And I went fat-free for a couple months and I was exhausted and I felt sick. So that was my first personal experience. I'm like, oh my gosh, nutrition can make us or break us. I mean, I was someone that was getting straight A's, was studying and had energy to still go out and have fun, to someone then who didn't even want to go out and wanted to spend like half the day in bed just from taking fats out of my diet. So that was a huge learning experience for me firsthand. And then I see it all the time with patients. I mean, they come in, they have the sad, standard American diet, they're eating crap, they have no energy, and they don't understand why. And it's sad because you could do so much with nutrient-dense food and feel great when you're eating healthy.
So where do you start with patients? I mean, when they come in and is there testing, or do you do questionnaires and kind of find out what they are eating and then figure out what they should be eating from that point? How does that work?
Sure. So when patients first come in, they give me a diet diary, which shows me everything they're eating and how they're feeling after they're eating. And then I'm going to have a lot of different tests looking at their hormones, looking at their blood sugar metabolism, looking at all these different markers to be able to give them specific guidance on nutrition, because everyone is different. Some people have a really hard time with carbohydrates. They're not processing them well. We really have to work on their blood sugar metabolism. And initially, sometimes we have to take out those carbs, but that's not going to work for everyone. So it's really specifically tailored to each patient.
And speaking of something that's specific to each patient is DNA. I mean, everyone's DNA is their own. It's been passed down to them from their ancestors, the parents, and ultimately to them. And so one of the concepts that we really drive home here is that your DNA isn't. A lot of people think that DNA is just what it is. It can't change, and there's nothing you can do about it. And so if you're predisposed to something that's been passed down through generations to your ancestors, that you can't change it. But what we're finding is that's not the case. That nutrition plays a huge role in our DNA and our epigenetics. And so can you help our listeners understand, especially if they're a new listener, how does that work? How does nutrition really make an impact into our DNA and change it for the better?
So one example I always think of, they've done some studies on diabetes, where if the mom has diabetes or the grandma or the great-grandmother has diabetes, that it's passed down from generation to the next one. But the studies really showed that actually it was related to a nutrient called chromium. And if your mom is deficient in chromium, and then she has you, then you're going to be born deficient in chromium, and you're going to have issues with your blood sugar. Now, a simple way to fix that is to do chromium-dense foods, or even sometimes take the supplement chromium to build those chromium levels back up. So it's not necessarily always this genetic thing that's going to affect us negatively. Sometimes there is an underlying nutritional component to that. And sometimes genes can be turned on and turned off through different nutrients. I've seen this so clearly when I've had patients that are identical twins, and they come in and they don't even look alike anymore. One looks like elderly and frail, and the other one still looks young and vibrant, and their faces literally look different, and it's lifestyle differences. It's amazing. And I've seen that a few times now in my practice, and every time I just sit there just amazed that the identical twins look different because of their environment, because of what they put into their bodies.
Yeah, and I've seen that too. I've seen that in the identical twins, but also, a lot of people are using DNA cloning for their pets or something, and then they're surprised that the clone pet doesn't look the same as the other pet, even though the DNA was identical, but based on they fed it a different diet and they treated it different. It was a different environment than their previous pet, so it turned out to look and behave different than their genetic clone. And so that was another example that struck me when you see these pictures of two cats that are supposedly clones of each other, but one's completely different because of their diet and their environment primarily. So just another example, and it just continues to amaze me as well as a lot of people in the audience here on how that is. Now you deal a lot with women's health,
Yes.
and so let's really dig into this. What type of diet, nutrition topics and ideas do women need to focus on most?
Sure. Well, sometimes my patients that are females in my practice are literally not sitting down for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Sometimes it's as simple as just forcing them to sit down and eat with the family, not be taking care of everyone else, to do some self-care. Sometimes it's really, they're missing the mark when it comes to self-care. And other times they're coming to see me, they're not losing weight, they've tried every diet, they've been to tons of doctors, and they're just still not losing weight. So then it's tailoring the diet specific to them. A lot of times these patients have underlying thyroid issues, have issues with their metabolism. So it's really figuring out specifically what's going on with those things, and then keeping them away from certain foods that may negatively impact the thyroid, and focusing on nutrient-dense foods that will help their metabolism and help them lose weight. And it's something I see a lot. Patients come to me all the time where they're just fed up and they can't get the weight off and they've almost given up. And I will say that if we change their diet after running some tests and seeing exactly what's going on, that I'll knock on wood, have been 100% successful when patients listen to me for a period of time at helping those difficult patients normalize their weight.
Now, there's a lot of fad diets out there, and a lot of them, there's tons of them. There's tons of books, and people are really confused over what they should be doing and what worked for one person. Does that, it may not transfer over to someone else either. So just in general, everybody's different, but what are just some general steps people can take as far as managing their weight if they want to lose weight? What are some things that they can do? You mentioned make sure that you're eating, breakfast and lunch, and don't skip those meals because that's not helping you. You mentioned that, but what are some other things?
Sure. So focusing on real food. I always say if you could avoid the processed foods, you're one step ahead of the game. So focusing on vegetables and lean organic meats and complex carbohydrates, kind of along the lines of the Mediterranean diet, where you're taking in real fats, real foods, and you're not eating these processed foods that have really no nutrients in them sometimes. I mean, one of the fad diets is, going gluten-free. And yes, a lot of people have issues digesting gluten, but then you start to do these gluten-free foods and they're high in the glycemic index. They are not nutrient dense. And then a lot of times my patients are gaining weight because they're eating that crap. So I'm just like, really just focus on the vegetables, focus on things that are closer to nature is always the best thing to do.
Yeah, and a lot of us have grown up with the food pyramid, and there was a heavy concentration on proteins, and I think things are shifting to focus more on things like fruits and vegetables. So how much of that should the normal person, the average person, be getting in their diet in terms of fruits and vegetables?
Sure. So depending on how their carbohydrate metabolism is, I always have a heavier focus usually on the vegetables, unless someone's active and exercising and is able to process those carbs. So I usually say it's a high amount. I mean, it's really like 2 fist size of vegetables with breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So it's a lot of nutrients that we need to take in through those veggies. And when I tell patients to eat vegetables at breakfast, they always look at me like I have 3 heads. But really, you kind of have to do it if you want to get in enough of the vegetables.
No, that's good. And I really resonated with what you said about people coming in and not eating breakfast and dinner. I mean, we have a toddler at home, and my wife, she's taking care of him and preparing meals, and then she sits down to feed herself, and she doesn't always have the time to finish a meal, and that's where people generally need to start. I've struggled trying to eat breakfast. Even if I'm not hungry in the morning, I'm trying to eat something to start my day, and a lot of people think that, gosh, if I skip some meals, then I'm not getting those calories. Therefore, I'm more likely to lose weight. And as you pointed out, that's not the case at all.
No, when you fast like that, I mean, it's good to do here and there, but when you fast like that continuously, the body thinks there's no food and it slows down the metabolism. The thyroid gets annoyed and it's like, okay, I'm going to slow down because this isn't a safe environment for me.
And no one wants an annoyed thyroid.
No.
That's great. We're getting close on time here, but I definitely want to talk about, I mean, right now we're in a time where people are worried about viral infections. I mean, we're in the midst of a pandemic. COVID is been on the rise here for a while, and a lot of people are generally worried and doing things to basically what I call hide from the virus. Wear a mask and wear gloves or use hand sanitizer, stay home, social distance, all those good things. But what else can people do? I mean, you've written some books, or you've helped contribute to some books and talk about building people's immune system and people's immunity in general. And what are some things that you would recommend for people to really boost and support their immune system?
Sure. So I always say we're kind of like fast moving plants. So we need all of the healing things that plants need. We need sun. So especially with this going on, the weather's still nice. Everyone should be getting outside. I mean, at least 15 minutes of sun. We don't want to burn, of course. We don't want to cause skin damage, but at least 15 minutes to bring up the vitamin D levels, the nitrous oxide levels. Like, there's so many healing components of the sun that we probably haven't even discovered yet. So that's really, really important. And then, of course, we need to be taking in water, at least 64 ounces of water a day. So important to keep our body healthy. And then, of course, taking in the nutrient-dense foods, which can really help support the immune system. If we're nutrient deprived, we're going to have issues with the immune system for sure, especially zinc. If we're low in zinc, it's a huge problem. So we really have to make sure we're taking in foods that are high in zinc, or even when applicable, taking in a supplement that has zinc in it. Really, really important. And then, of course, like I said, we're fast moving plants. We need to be exercising. Exercise is so, so, so important. And right now, during these times, some kind of moving meditation can be really helpful, like yoga or Tai Chi or Qigong, something where you're getting exercise, but at the same time, quieting the minds. Stress is a huge, huge, huge problem right now, and it suppresses the immune system. We've seen that in study after study. So whatever we can do to help mitigate the stress response, to help quiet our minds, is key right now, for sure.
Yeah, and that's something I didn't even think of for people is stress management and how much of a positive impact that can have on someone's overall health and their immune system. So I'm glad you mentioned that. So besides zinc, what are some other just general nutrient dense foods that really target the immune system?
Sure. So I just say, vegetables in general, the non-starchy ones, you just want to, like I said earlier, 2 fist size, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Mix it up, do variety, because different vegetables will be higher in zinc, others higher in vitamin C. But if you mix it up, you don't really have to sit there and figure out what's what, that kind of thing. And then, of course, I mean, you always want to double check with your doctor, but a good multivitamin right now is key. We need to keep the vitamin D levels up. So combination, getting some sun and getting those tested in the blood and taking some vitamin D. You want to be taking vitamin C, keeping those levels good. And then in some cases, even vitamin A when applicable, all these micronutrients that can really help support our immune system during these times for sure. And then of course there's botanicals that help support immunity. Some are common, we heard of them, like elderberry, echinacea, golden seal, all the ones that were probably used back in 1918 for the Spanish flu are still around. They work great. But of course I always say, every person's different and they really want to check with their doctor before starting to take any of these things.
Awesome. Great stuff. So last question is how can listeners get a hold of you? I mean, if they would need to reach out to you or need to contact you or maybe be a potential patient of yours, how can they reach out to you?
Sure. I mean, they can just go on my website, which is drfinker.com. All the information's there, my contact information. I have my practice in Belmore. I've been practicing for almost 20 years already. Time goes fast. And we're doing virtual visits now during these times.
Awesome. Great stuff. Well, thank you. Our guest has been Dr. Jillian Finker. She's a naturopathic doctor. She mentioned with a private practice in New York, specializing in women's health and an expert in natural medicine. And so thank you again, Dr. Finker, for joining us today on Nutrigenomic Nation. And from all of us here at Nutrigenomic Nation, I hope you enjoyed our discussion today, and we hope you join us next time when we'll discuss other topics related to your good health. Thank you so much for listening.
This show has been produced by Market Domination, LLC. To discover how you can have your own show completely done for you and turn it into a real published book and become the authority in your marketplace, go to www.marketdominationllc.com/podcast offer.